We completed the simulated offseason. Now we look ahead to see where the Sharks stand and why it sets them up for a massive 2026 offseason.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker of the Reef, also the co-host of Locked On NHL. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly a part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. If you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow along wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch on YouTube as well. And today, we kind of recap all the moves that we've done this week in our simulated offseason. In case you've missed it, Monday, we kind of took care of business at home, made some trades. Tuesday, we did a full mock draft. And then on Wednesday, we dove into free agency. Today, we're going to kind of recap what we've done this week, look at where this puts the Sharks in terms of cap space and the health of their cap sheet over the next couple seasons, and why I think this offseason sets them up for a big-time offseason next year. So let's start with kind of just a nice recap. So again, I've gone through all this the last 3 days, right, of kind of putting this plan together, what I think the Sharks, kind of the approach Mike Grier is going to take, right? And the goal for me was just improve the overall talent on the roster, but still maintain flexibility and not commit yet to some long-term pieces and give your young players a chance to grow and develop, which is better NHL players around them. So, as a reminder, this is just what I think. I'm an idiot, right? A self-proclaimed idiot, as I've said multiple times, but just my approach to it. So let's start out with some of the maneuvers I made when it came to trades, and then we'll kind of look at some of the signings and my at least 23-man roster. So I traded big moves trade-wise. I traded Mason Marchment from the Dallas Stars for a third and a fourth. I traded for Laurent Brossoit from the Chicago Blackhawks for a seventh-round pick, as they wanted to kind of clear cap space. I sent Henry Thrun to the New York Rangers, where, of course, David Quinn is now a assistant coach there, and the Sharks try to kind of alleviate some cap space. And then I offer sheeted Jack Quinn for 2 years at $4 million, which cost me the Sharks 2026 second-round pick. I also made some signings. Re-signed Jack Thompson to a 2-year deal at $1.125 million. Re-signed Daniel Gushin to a 1-year deal at $925,000. Pavel Regenda to a 1-year deal at $775,000. Re-signed both the AHL goalies and Georgi Romanov and Gabe Carrier, as well as gave Nikolai Kovalenko a 1-year extension at $1.25 million, and Jimmy Schultz a 1-year deal at $800,000. I extended William Eklund on July 1st with an 8-year deal at $8.5 million. I know some people feel it's a little rich. Guys, I don't think you're prepared for what contracts are going to be looking like here in a couple seasons with the cap space going up as high as it's going. So we're trying to get out in front of it. And then in free agency, I signed Chris Streeter as kind of the third goalie, mostly play in the AHL, but if you need him to play in the NHL, he can kind of come up. I signed Pius Suter to a 4-year deal at $4.5 million. Matt Grzelcyk to a 3-year deal at $3.75 million, and Nick Perbix to a 3-year deal at $3.5 million. Of course, all those coming from Evolving Hockey. And I added a little, kind of rounded up, added a little like the Sharks are bad tax to most those kind of contracts there. So that's where it leaves me right now, at least when it comes to the opening night roster. So again, I have William Eklund, Celebrini, Tyler Toffoli, Mason Marchment, Will Smith, Jack Quinn, Alex Wenberg, Pius Suter, Colin Graff, Barclay Goodrow, Ty Dellandrea, Nikolai Kovalenko with Carl Grundstrom as the extra. Logan Couture, of course, contract hanging out. Defensively, Mukaba Dulan, Grzelcyk, Mario Ferraro, Perbix, Sam Dickinson, who I think will at least get a 9-game trial. And then the Sharks will make a decision on him. So Dickinson and Liljegren, and then Vlasic and Darnay's as your extras. Defensively, and with Askarov and Brossois there. The Sharks would be over the cap floor at $78 million. They'd have about $17 million in projected cap space with roster size of 23, and they'd have 48 contracts handed out of a possible 50, so they would have some flexibility there heading into the season where if they want to make some trades, want to bring on some extra guys, like they can kind of, it just gives them flexibility, especially too, as a reminder, Brett Burns' retention comes off. So the Sharks will have a retention slot open up. They'll have plenty of cap space where if they want to be a middleman when it comes trade deadline and get a nice juicy P, like just gives them some like plenty of options. Or if a player becomes available, Mike Grier will be able to easily jump in on that. So we also did a 7-round mock draft. So with it, at least with my offseason, right, I traded away a 3rd and a 4th to get Mason Marchment. I got a 5th back from the Henry Thrun trade. And then I turned around and I traded the 7th round pick to the Chicago Blackhawks. So as a recap, I got Michael Misa, of course, at number 2. And again, we are going to spend next week, like Monday, expect deep dive Michael Misa like profile. Like we're going to spend a whole 30 minutes of just diving into Michael Misa and what to expect with him, et cetera, et cetera. Henry Brustevich at pick number 30. Pick 33, I got William Moore. Charlie Trethaway at 53. Mans Goose, the goalie, at 115 in the 4th round. Owen Martin at 139 in the 5th. And Tommy Lafreniere in the 5th round from the Blazers. I reached out to our good friend Stephen Ellis. He gave me a B, so I will take that. He did say Misa does a lot of the work in his grading, but I will take a B in this from Stephen Ellis. So I think again, my whole goal for this was to try to again just improve, at least this offseason, improve the talent, NHL talent, add some, which I think the Sharks did in my offseason, right? Mason Marchment, like legit NHL player who can score 20 goals, like 20 goal seasons, right? Jack Quinn, definitely a swing, but I think the talent's there. And I'm going to bet on the how many times do guys leave Buffalo and then immediately kind of get better. And there's a reason why he was the 8th overall pick in the draft. Like I believe in Quinn, and I think for a 2nd round pick, I feel like that's a move that would work out for San Jose. Pius Suter, I think, is just a guy who can plug a hole wherever you need, at least among the forwards. And Grzelcyk and Perbix, I think are just going to be kind of solid guys who help that puck moving ability that the Sharks just struggle at right now, and still gives guys like Mukaba Dulan a chance to continue to grow in their role, and still have some flexibility for guys like Cagnoni and Thompson and whoever else to kind of make their marks, eventually kind of make their, and then Sam Dickinson, of course, give him an opportunity to make the NHL next year. So that was kind of my plan, and and finding some more goalie depth, and I believe in Brossois, who's been a guy kind of as a backup goalie. I know he's coming off a knee injury. I do wonder if the Blackhawks kind of shut him down, especially after the Spencer Knight trade. And I think Chris Treager is a type of goalie. Again, if you need him to play for a week or two, he's not going to I don't think he's going to embarrass you. And he's a guy who's played a lot of NHL games. He's played a lot of AHL games. And I think he would be a really nice kind of perfect the Aaron Dell role, like the veteran who can play some NHL games and play in the AHL and just kind of be a good soldier and be a good teammate. So that's kind of what I envision, at least for my offseason moves. So we're going to talk about kind of what this means for the Sharks now with their cap situation, their cap sheet, and how it does maintain a lot of flexibility for San Jose. If they want to start to get aggressive, basically at any point, Mike Grier can kind of put his foot on the gas and start getting aggressive because of the way, at least I set up the Sharks offseason. So we'll get to that here in just 1 second. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller, longer. Personally, I like the in-shell variety. I like hearing the little crack. It's like a snack meditation for me. But if you like the no-shell, I'm not going to shell shame you. They have plenty of great options for everybody. Plenty of great flavors to choose from. I'm more just a plain salted guy. I guess I'm old school with the shell and just the plain salt. But they have plenty of awesome flavors to check out. Great to just throw in your like desk at work right around 2:30, right? You get that snacky feeling. They'll hold you over until dinner time. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right. I do, of course, want to thank you for making a Locked On Sharks your first listen. Again, proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. If you haven't yet, perfect time to subscribe to Locked On Sharks, wherever you get podcasts. And, of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. We have the draft next week. We've done a lot of work towards that. Free agency right after that. And then we can start looking ahead to the 25-26 season because it's going to be here sooner than you think, kids. So make sure, again, you're following along wherever you get podcasts. And, of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. So we made all these moves, right, with the goal of improving this team, right? And the goal this year, I think, realistic goal is to kind of make that Ducks-like jump, right? Of instead of being one of the, 3 worst teams in the NHL, can you kind of be like playing 500 hockey, playing, maybe not in a playoff position. Like, don't expect a playoff position, but can you kind of be going from like picking first, second, or third to picking like 10th in the draft next year, right? And that's kind of the goal. And then setting yourself up to start being more aggressive. So after all the simulated moves I made, what would the Sharks cap situation look like, and who would be kind of under contract, and who will we expect to be starting to kind of get off the books here soon? So the Sharks, under my simulated offseason, again, with a cap ceiling of $95.5 million, would have a projected cap hit of 78.5, basically, with $17 million in cap space. And that also includes $5 million of dead cap. That's like the Martin Jones contract. There's, the Tomas Hertl and Carlson retentions in there as well. And the Nikolai Kovalenko, or not Kovalenko, Knizhov. No, not Knizhov. Knizhov. No, it was Knizhov. Knizhov buyout as well. So, which is like less than $1 million type of thing. But then you look ahead to, because we know the 26-27 cap is kind of already set at 104. And then the 27-28 cap is projected to be at 113.5. So like the cap's just going to like aggressively go up here over the next couple of seasons. I mean, it's going up almost $10 million from 25 to 26, like the 25-26 season to the 26-27 season. That's almost a Mitch Marner you could throw in there, kids. I know somebody's getting very angry right now. So under that, the Sharks are projected to have 11 out of 23 players signed, but that doesn't include guys like Chernyshov and Cam Lund. Cam Lund, we expect to be a full-time NHLer by the end of next year, right? Chernyshov, we expect to kind of be cracking the NHL. Maybe a guy like Quint Musty. Like that doesn't kind of project for some of those guys, but again, all those guys are ELC contracts under $1 million. The Sharks, even with my $8.5 million William Eklund extension that people thought was way too much, they're going to have $52.5 million in cap space going into next offseason. And yes, they'll have 22 people under contract, and they're going to, of course, continue to fill this out, not to re-sign player. Like, they'll have a lot of RFAs that they're going to have to, kind of start to make decisions on, et cetera, et cetera. But still, like, $52 million in cap space for next offseason. And yes, we know the Will Smith and Celebrini extensions are going to be hanging over the franchise neck, because July 1st, 2026, both those players are eligible to sign extensions. And I would assume Mike Grier is probably going to be pretty quick with getting that done for both those players, because they're going to, they're going to be well worth it, right? Especially the way that we're projecting both those guys to continue their growth and development, and how important we feel like they're going to be, especially a guy like Celebrini is going to be the one of the pillar, or actually both guys are pillars and of the franchise and where it's heading. So we do expect like those guys are going to need new contracts and stuff soon, but still, like, there's a ton of cap space coming up for San Jose. So who's projected to kind of be starting to come off the books, and who's going to be still on the books and all that stuff? So let's start with the forward group. So 26-27, after the end of the 25-26 season, right? Wenberg, Mason Marchment, and Carl Grundstrom will all be UFAs. So you can, the Sharks will be able to make some decisions if they want to potentially trade those guys at the trade deadline, if the season doesn't go as expected, or goes as expected, I guess, and this isn't a playoff caliber team yet, and you feel like you can maybe get some pieces for some of these guys, right? Those are potential guys there. Couture will have one more year left on his deal at 26-27, and you can pencil in all that money going towards one of Will Smith and or Celebrini, with some more added on top. You'll have Dellandrea, Kovalenko, and Colin Graff will all be RFAs. And Colin Graff, I think the way he's projecting, and we expect a big season from Graff, will be, eligible for a really nice extension. Maybe not, it's way too early to project, especially with what Colin Graff does or doesn't do this season. But, I think it's fair to say a very healthy extension for Colin Graff will definitely be in the works there. So like you're going to have plenty of, still plenty of roster turnover and still a lot of potential holes to fill. Even if guys like Chernyshov and Musty are ready to kind of make that jump, and Cam Lund is ready to be an NHL, full-time NHL player, as he's on the Colin Graff road to success of, kind of starting this expected start the season in the AHL and kind of run out his game and then be a full-time NHLer the follow, the second half of the season. Just in the forward group, yes, there's a lot of young players up and coming, but there's still going to be a lot of holes to fill. And if the Sharks, as we'll talk about in the third segment, want to be super aggressive, they're going to have plenty of opportunities to be super aggressive this upcoming off season, or the following off season. And then you look at the defense, and under my plan, Perbix and Grzelcyk are the only two guys who are signed. You would assume Sam Dickinson at that point would probably be ready to play in the NHL, or maybe at least start in the AHL, but you'd expect him to be playing NHL games in the 26-27 season. And then you have Vlasic, whose contract will expire, Ferraro, whose contract expires, Liljegren, whose contract expires, Desharnais, whose contract expires, and Shakir Mukhamadullin, who will be an RFA from that you would expect to also get a healthy-ish sort of contract, and maybe it's the Ferraro type of contract for Mukhamadullin, with kind of some probably like $4 million at 4 seasons or something like that, if Mukhamadullin has the kind of season we expect him to have. But there's going to be plenty of opportunities on the back end, right? And then the Sharks will have to look for another goalie behind Askarov, and then Askarov might be also looking for an extension as well. So, I think with the way that I've set things up here and the way that Mike Grier has really worked to kind of reset this his cap sheet, there's still going to be a lot of turnover, and there's still going to be a lot of opportunity, and there's still a lot of especially opportunities for younger players. But I think that's when you're going to start to see Grier really get aggressive with trying to kind of get this rebuild into the next phase. And especially if the Sharks have that Ducks type of jump, right? And if they go from picking second in the draft to picking 10th in the draft, right? And then they're playing 500 hockey, and they're in it until the trade deadline type of thing, right? So let's discuss that next. All right, before we finish up, of course want to thank you for making it Locked On Sharks your first listen. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast. There's no off season. We're still bringing you daily league-wide stories that matter the most with local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. All right. And I think, though, that my biggest takeaway, right, is, yes, the Sharks have all the cap space in the world. And, yes, they're going to have to start to pay some of their guys. But the way that Grier has set himself up with, and myself a little bit in this, but anyway, the way Grier has set the roster up, right, where next off season, this 26-27 off season, the Sharks will be in a position to be extremely aggressive, whether it's via trade or free agency or what have you, because they still have plenty of draft picks, right? Even with me giving a 2026 second round pick to the Buffalo Sabres, the Sharks will still have their own top 10 projected. We'll say top 10 projected 2026 pick, which is in what's supposed to be a pretty awesome draft class. Yeah, the Oilers pick, which we project to still be kind of, late first round, because the Oilers are still probably going to be pretty good. But, right, I mean, we just saw them lose, and you think that they're going to have to make some decisions on guys, and they don't have a goalie. So maybe. All right. You still have the Avs pick. And again, the Avs are probably still going to be pretty good. So you still have 3 picks in the top 2 rounds, and you have methods to get more ammunition if you trade Wenberg, trade Ferraro, trade whoever, right? You still have ammunition to get more, kind of restock the pipeline, or at least the draft picks here, at the trade deadline or during the season. And I think, though, especially if Celebrini and Smith and Askarov, I think those 3 in particular, right? If Celebrini continues to make the jump that we expect Celebrini, and continues to progress away, and Smith, especially if he can play well and become that second line center, or at least keep it warm until projected second overall pick Michael Misa enters the fray. And Misa's probably, assuming, my assumption is with Misa, we'll talk about more next week, that he spends a year in college and then he signs his ELC after his season is over and plays some NHL games at the end of next season. That's kind of my kind of expectation with Misa. Assuming those guys, right, kind of continue to do what we expect them to do, and if Askarov can be the guy that we kind of expect, and maybe he has that Dustin Wolf type effect on the Sharks this season. I don't see why Mike Grier doesn't start getting super aggressive, right? And doesn't start kind of using up some of this stuff to try to make this team better sooner. And like early look at the 25-20 or the 26 offseason unrestricted free agents. There's a lot of big names at the top, and of course most of these guys are probably not going to get to free agency. Of course, Connor McDavid, pretty good. Last time I checked, pretty good. Do I expect him to become a free agent? No, I don't. But you have Kyle Connor, dude put up 40 goals this year, and we know the Jets sometimes like kind of do weird things. Jack Eichel, again, you never know with Vegas, man, especially if they're trying to get Mitch Marner. Like, who knows what they do? I assume they would keep Eichel and maybe Mark Stone is out, but still, you have Panarin, a guy who can score a bajillion goals. You have Martin Necas with Colorado. Maybe it's just not a good season with Colorado. He's 26, going to be 20. You have Adrian Kempe, Alex Tuck, Nick Schmaltz, like Kirill Kaprizov. I don't expect. I think Minnesota will pay him all the money in the world to keep him. There's Connor Garland. Like, there's some names here that you're like, okay, like you can look at it. Still, I think they're going to have to try to find some answers on the blue line, especially with all the kind of contracts that are expiring. But with all the pieces the Sharks have, right, and that's where, again, I think Mike Grier, we know Mike Grier likes to make a trade. Maybe this year it's more about just trying to kind of raise the level, and then next year you go get a big time defensive piece to pair, especially with Sam Dickinson, who you expect to be, in the NHL in the 26-27 season. We'll see, but like, I think Grier's really setting himself up, gathering as much assets as he can, right? And then that 26-27 season is where you really kind of start to get, I would say, consolidate your assets, see what you got after this season, and then really consolidate and try to start putting together, especially if you feel like you have your core pieces in Misa and Celebrini and Smith and Dickinson and Askarov and Eklund, et cetera, et cetera. And then you start making those playoff pushes, and then you start tweaking the roster. And okay, how do we get better? And do we need to add here and add there? But I think it's safe to say, like, I do think it's safe to say, no matter like what Grier does, and we know Grier is going to have to do stuff this offseason, but I do think it's safe to say, like, the dark days are over for San Jose of like the tanking and stuff. And I know, as much as people want to tank for McKenna, I just don't see this team being in the driver's seat, we'll say. I don't see them being in the driver's seat for the McKenna sweepstakes. They could still be, a spectator, and they could still, maybe they're in the back seat, maybe they're the Uber's coming to pick them up, whatever analogy you want to use. But I don't see them like in the pole position. I don't see them in the driver's seat for McKenna. And, because then what happens is like, well, if we get McKenna, well, Landon DuPont the following year, the 27 draft, he's really good too. We should just take and then by the time you're kind of done tanking, like Eklund's like 30, like it's going to be time to go. There's always going to be another prospect to quote unquote tank for, right? So I really do like doing this whole exercise kind of made me, I think, really appreciate the work that Mike Grier has done over the last couple seasons to kind of start to gear himself up for the big moves that the Sharks will need to make here. And two, just the the ability, I think, for Grier to just whenever he feels, and something that we talked about with Joe from Locked On Sabres last offseason was it's never too, if you feel like you have the guys, right? And number 71 here feels like you got the guy, right? If you feel like you got the guys, it's never too early to start getting aggressive. And, like I try to put together a pretty conservative plan, but there's a lot of opportunities for Mike Grier to get really aggressive very quickly if he believes that he's got the guys. And I think he believes that he's got the guys, and more guys coming here really soon. So that's going to be it for me today. We'll be back tomorrow. Make sure you're following along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at My Fry Hole. Till tomorrow. Bye, friends.